All right, Qualcast Nation, we have a very special guest, JJ Virgin, triple certified in nutrition, multiple bestseller author, podcaster,
Fitness Hall of Famer.
Fitness Hall of
And
Famer.
I met you at the gym.
I was going to start with that too, by the way. JJ, it's funny because I was talking to my wife earlier, and we were looking at all these amazing programs at Eudaimonia in the morning, and I told her, I'm like, do you think anyone's going to be at the gym right now? And lo and behold, JJ hustling, doing all the things. And but JJ, honestly, it's a great pleasure and honor for you to be on the podcast. So thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I wanted to take a step back, JJ, because your area of focus, when we look at like the podcast, people over 40, did you naturally just fall into this demographic, or were you drawn to it for whatever reason? Because let's be honest with you, there's been so many myths when it comes to health and wellness, especially as we age. But I want to hear from you, what really drew you to this demographic?
I aged. Yeah. If you'd asked me this 30 years ago, I would have been like, who cares about that? Right. Yeah. But, all of a sudden I turned 60 wonderful. So I got very interested in powerful aging.
And you look incredible, by the way. 60 years old, you would never guess it.
Thank you very much. Well, what actually happened is in my late 50s, and you'll appreciate the relevance of this, I grew up, I was the tallest kid in class, right? So I was on all the boys' teams, and I lifted weights with the high school football team. So I was always the strong girl. A couple of years ago, I couldn't open a jar, and I didn't think anything of it, handed it to my husband. But the third time it happened, I'm like, what is going on here? Because grip strength is a proxy for overall strength. And here I was at the gym, and I was doing better than the other people my age. So I'm like, I'm great. But, I'm losing this grip strength, and it was like a shot across the bow. And, as we age, we lose fast twitch muscle fiber. This is why I focus on aging powerfully, because that's where you generate your power from. And I think it's also just a metaphor. When you do hard things, like you can do hard things. The more you do, the more you can do, right? So it's kind of a metaphor for life. So that's where this all came from. So I was like, oh, time to focus on this. So hence the well beyond 40 double entendre.
Amazing. Amazing. And so what changed? How did you make the transition in terms of addressing the fast twitch, addressing the power? Because once again, I think a lot of people don't have this approach when it comes to aging. They think, hey, maybe my doctor or whoever told me to lift some weights. Yes, I could keep up my cardio and continue to jog and what have you. But how did you make the pivot?
I have the fortunate background of being an exercise physiologist. So that was good, because here's the reality. Like, we look at healthcare practitioners training, and they're lucky if they get a little nutrition, but there's no exercise to speak of. And the reality is, as we age, it's not just about moving. You have to be very specific on the type of movement you do, because on our bodies, we have two different types of muscle fiber and then a hybrid in between. So we have slow twitch and we have fast twitch. Slow twitch is what we're using right now to keep us upright, to move us around. Fast twitch is to be able to pick up heavy things, move fast. And then we have the ones in between that will flip to whatever we're using the most. So if you're doing more fast twitch exercise, those hybrids will move to fast. If you're doing more slow, they'll go slow. That's why it's like when people say, what about slow training? I'm like, you'll go slow if you slow train. And so as we age, we predominantly lose that fast twitch, which is why they'll look at things like gait speed as an indicator of all-cause mortality. So I look at this and go, all right, we clearly need to put the priority on fast twitch muscle fiber as we age. And you don't hear any distinction when people are aging. It's like, oh yeah, you got to walk, do some flexibility, go to a yoga class. And that's important, but you also need to lift some heavy things. Like we were doing at the gym the other day.
Absolutely. And so maybe we could walk through some of the ways literally to thrive, like, and to create that fast, to create the fast switch capacity, because there's so many of us that especially when it comes to the health and wellness space and all the advice that we're getting, it's hard to know where to start. It's hard to know what to focus on.
And there might be some conflicting information.
Which honestly, there's tons of.
Right. So, well, let's just go with some facts to start with to paint the picture so people will understand how important this is. Because starting at around the age 30, and it's not like 30 is some magic number. In fact, I don't know if you saw the latest study that showed that we had like these two pivotal times when we kind of like increase our aging, 44 and 60, as these big like aging bursts. But starting at around age 30, we start to lose muscle mass, and it's up to 1% a year. It's like 3 to 8% a decade. But more importantly, we lose muscle strength, and about 2 to 4 times the amount that we lose the size, and we lose muscle power even more so, 6 to 8% power. Strength is if you were going to pick up one thing, the heaviest thing you could pick up once, that's strength, and power is how fast you could do something. And so you've got that going on. We also know that we lose VO2 max, and that is the biggest indicator of all-cause mortality. So if you think about that, you go, all right, what do we need to do? If those are the big issues, what should we do in order to counteract that? And exercise probably is the single biggest thing you can do to slow down or reverse aging. But then you, of course, got to have the nutrition and recovery to fuel it and recover well. But with the exercise side, where I like to start, because I like to be very actionable, otherwise people don't do anything, right? And I think the first place to start is just to ensure that you're actually moving more. And to me, this is like flossing. So I don't count this as exercise, because in order for something to be exercise, you have to do more than what you're used to, and your body has to adapt to get stronger. So for some people, walking might be exercise for a little while because they're very deconditioned. But ideally, the first thing you do is you start clocking in your steps. You track it on something like an Oura ring, right? You make sure you're getting in a minimal, because the bell curve says at least 8,000 steps a day. When they've looked at all the studies, it's 7,500 to 8,000 where it makes a difference. More is better, but that's like that piece the place you want to get to. So that's where I start, is let's just make sure you're doing that. Because what I don't want to do is give people all these recommendations, and now they're exercising 30 minutes 3 times a week and sitting on their butt the rest of the time, right? Because it can happen. So that's step one. Once they're doing that, I'm like, could we throw a rucking vest on? Remember when you went to school and you wore that backpack with the books?
That was super heavy.
That was rucking. Yeah. We all rucked as kids.
Absolutely.
Right? They don't ruck anymore because now they have their iPad or whatever. But the first thing I like them to do is let's walk. Then maybe we could ruck a bit. And then we'll start to add in the real targeted specific exercise. And I always start with resistance training because, again, if you don't use it, you lose it. And I want to make sure that we're getting in, we're building muscle. I think this is like your 401k for your body, is packing on as much muscle. And I say those words very specifically, like pack on as much muscle as you possibly can, because putting on 10 pounds of muscle a year is a struggle. And it's important to say that because so many women are like, I don't want to get bulky. And I'm like, your wildest dreams. 40 years of doing this with people, I've never had a woman get bigger lifting weights, because muscle is metabolic spanx. It holds everything in tighter and boosts your metabolism. So if all you did was focus on building muscle, you are going to become more insulin sensitive. So you're going to be better at using fat for fuel. You're going to have better immune system, and you're going to have a little bit better metabolism too. So that's always my first place to start.
And it's a great place to start. I really feel, I don't know. I mean, once again, we were talking about this beforehand. Medical community, we don't learn this. We don't learn this stuff, right? And the classic teaching when it comes to trying to get people metabolically healthy is obviously, yes, exercise more, but there's a bit of more of a focus on the cardio side, and eat less, which we'll talk about in a second there. But when did this come to more of a headway in terms of the leveraging muscle? Like, once again, because we're not learning this, and I can't tell if it was just my IG feed getting inundated with stuff, but is it recent studies? Is it just people coming to that awareness that this is what we need to do?
Well, I will tell you, back in graduate school, I was paying my way through graduate school as a personal trainer. In fact, as far as I can tell, me, Mark Sisson, and Tony Horton and Body by Jake were the first personal trainers way back in the early 80s. And what I discovered, because in graduate school, all of our research was being done on cardio for a couple reasons. Number one, because Precor gave us a ton of machines. So we had all the treadmills, right? So that was the first part, but also because people came in 3 days a week and they had an hour class, and it was really easy to do a 30-minute protocol. I recognized very quickly, personal training with people, that was not getting them to their goals, and they weren't going to pay me if they weren't getting results. And so I started doing resistance training, because I went down, we had in California, where I was doing this in LA, we had a bodybuilding gym called Gold's Gym. It was the mecca of bodybuilding. Have you ever been to it?
I've never been to
It's quite a
Gold's,
scene.
but it's like,
oh my
you
gosh.
see the videos and
Right.
Arnold, the Gold's.
When I first went there, it was literally one warehouse, and it was 2 warehouses, then it became 3 warehouses. And what was wild about this place is when I first started going, because later on they added a cardio room, but at first they had a little loft and they had 3 assault bikes. And that was it. Everything else was all of this weight equipment, and people would go up there. The bikes were always empty. Like if someone was ripping for a contest, they would go up there, but no one ever used them. They were all in the weight room. And what I noticed was these people looked amazing. And the people that we had at school doing all the cardio did not. In fact, what you'll hear is that someone who's an endurance runner generally has the same muscle mass as a couch potato, right? So I went, you know what, I'm in school, I want to learn these things, but I also need to get paid. So I'm going to get people results, and resistance training gets them results because it actually is going to change their metabolism. Whereas the cardio, like if they stop, they're going to lose the results. You stop lifting weights, you're not going to lose all the muscle overnight. You'll keep it. So that's what I noticed. Now, I've been beating the resistance training drum for years, and I feel like in the last 5 to 10 years, it's really started to come out. And I think because a lot of experts have really started getting it out there. I mean, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon wrote Forever Strong. Dr. Mark Hyman started talking about it. Peter Attia has been talking about it. So that's been fantastic. And I love the concept that Dr. Peter Attia talks about with the centenarian decathlon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great because if you think about it, all right, what do I want to do in my 80s and 90s? And I better train for it now. And I'll tell you, people will say, they go, I can't do those squats because I've got bad knees. And I go, but you have to get off the toilet.
Right.
So what do we want to be able to do in life? I know, like if I'm looking at my goals for 80s and 90s, I want to wear stilettos. I want to be able to walk up and down stairs and dance. And I don't ever want to have to call my husband to get off the toilet. So I'm going to squat. And I think this is important because when you're doing resistance training, you're not doing it to be better at resistance training. You're not doing it so that you can do really great things at the gym. You're doing it so you can be better out in the wild and not get injured.
Functional. Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm keen to get your input in terms of all these clients you've worked with. Almost like what do you feel like is the minimal effective dose? Like how frequently do people have to get to the gym? Do you have, as you mentioned, you want to lift heavy to get the results of, increasing your lean muscle mass, the effect that it has on your bones. But in terms of volume or frequency, what comes to mind when dealing with all the clients you've worked with?
Well, what's great is it doesn't take that much. And once you've got it, it doesn't take that much to maintain. You've got to dial the diet in too. But 2 days a week and getting in the volume of, I've divided the body into 4 parts, but I focus on 3. So upper body pushing, example would be a push-up, an overhead press, a dip. And you talk about going to the gym, but the reality is you could do those things at home. Upper body pulling, like a pull-up, a pull-down, a bent over row, an upright row. Hip and thigh hinging, squats and deadlifts, and then power core. But the reality is, if you're doing squats and deadlifts and push-ups, like you got it, right? So I want my core to be functional. I'm not worried about being in a physique contest and having 6-pack abs. I want abs that actually work and a back that actually works. So if I'm doing squats, deadlifts, and bent over rows, I got it. So if you're doing that and you're hitting each of those body parts twice a week, maybe even once a week, but I think twice when you're trying to build, and getting at least 20 total sets per week per area, that will do for hypertrophy. As long as you're pushing. Remember, exercise is doing more than what you're used to so your body can adapt and get stronger. So you can't just go in every week and do, okay, I'm going to do 2 sets of 10 push-ups twice a week. No, it's got to get harder. So maybe you go to 3 sets, maybe you do it faster, maybe you go to 15 reps, but you want to progress as well.
Absolutely. And I like that practical aspect, JJ, like just giving people hope, really, because you see a lot, once again, on your IG feed or what have you, people going to the gym 3, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, and hearing that you could get that impact in one session per week. And as you mentioned, you got to push. You got to be able to not have that lackadaisical approach when it comes to the gym. But I think this is what I like to hear, and what the audience is hearing, is that it's attainable. It's not some kind of pipe dream, running a marathon goal. It's once, twice, 3 times a week. And even more importantly, you could do this at home.
You could. So I think that to start, if you said, I'm going to do this twice a week, and I could do it at home, I could use some dumbbells and a TRX trainer. I love the TRX trainer. I think
it's muscle. I find it's like muscles that you don't even, like, you're sore after. Like, yeah. You know what I mean? Like you think, hey, there's no weights along with this, but using your own body weight exercises can push you.
I'd never used one before, and I was at a spa, and a TRX master trainer was there. I'm like, all right, game on. He killed me. He's like, okay. But I think what happens on some of the social feeds is you watch this crazy stuff, and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm out. I'm out. And if you think about this, you want to do things that are functional, that mimic activities of daily living, like a squat, like a bent over row. I love farmer's carry. So simple things that you could do, and you can do them at home to start. Now, at some point you might need to progress if you want heavier weights, but you can also just buy heavier weights for home too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Once again, JJ, I just like the practical approach, taking away barriers for people to really achieve their goals. And as I've mentioned many times on my podcast here, is that strength is insurance. Like, I see it too often in the ICU where patients come in frail and don't have that body armor. And when they have adversity, physical adversity, they're not able to overcome it. And as a result, you get all the repeat infections, the clots in the leg, the sacral ulcers. And so this, to me, as we age, is absolutely vital.
Yeah, it's why you want to lay down as much as possible, because then if you do get injured, you have a little bit of extra in the bank.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, I was telling somebody this before we aired, but those miracle stories that we get, the miracle recovery stories, 9 times out of 10, they're gym rats. They're people that go to the gym on a regular basis, that exercise on a regular basis. And it's not just the foundation that they're strong, but it's also this. It's the mental capacity they have. Because those times, I mean, I don't know when you flew in, JJ, but getting up at, I think it was around like 7:30, 8 o'clock to hit the gym. How often do you truly feel like doing it? But you're there. You overcome that that inertia, and you do it day in and day out. And when you have that adversity when it comes to your health, that same mindset comes into play.
You know that saying, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything?
Yeah.
You work out to do hard things. You learn that you can do hard things.
Yeah.
So if you can do hard things in the gym, then you can do hard things in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nutrition, the nutrition aspect. I think this is another component that has a lot of multiple directions. You're hearing people talking about carnivore. You're hearing people talking about vegan, people talking about whole foods. I like to hear your take, because once again, JJ, I think what it draws me to you, and my wife is a huge fan, by the way, as well.
Did I get to meet her?
Oh, unfortunately, she just had to fly back home. But is like you have a practical approach. It's simplified and it doesn't have to be too complicated. But what do you feel like for as we age is the important components for us to thrive, to be that, what was the term you used, the octa, no,
the centenarian
centenarian.
decathlete.
Yeah.
That's a steal over from Dr. Peter Attia.
We'll take it.
Well, if you look at it, what's happening, we have this phenomenon called anabolic resistance as we age, which means our body now has trouble using protein to trigger muscle protein synthesis, right? So we actually need more protein, not less, as we age. And when you look at the RDI in the United States, it was based on young men, and they were looking at nitrogen excretion studies, and it's like, it basically overstated things, and it was also not based on seniors. So we need twice as much. I mean, what all the studies are showing and all the research scientists are saying are basically somewhere between 0.7 to 1 or even higher. And people get, it is so weird about protein. It's like people get so freaked out about protein as if they eat 1.1 grams and something's going to happen, like their kidneys are going to implode or their bones are just going to disintegrate. Now, the research shows that people who eat more protein, a higher protein diet, actually have better bone mineral density. And if they do excrete more calcium, well, they took in more calcium. So higher protein, and I always tell people, start your diet, build your diet around protein, and then eat from the plate of protein, fat, and fiber. But you start with protein because protein, first of all, studies show that people who eat protein first make better food choices. Protein's more satiating than the other macronutrients, like 2 times the satiety. It slows down stomach emptying. It's going to naturally elevate GLP-1, just like fiber does. But also, beyond being satiating, it's also satisfying because you're getting those essential amino acids that are helping you make dopamine and serotonin, so you don't have the cravings. It also is more thermic. So contrast that with carbs and fat, where fat takes basically nothing to be digested by your body, and carbs are about 5 to 10% in the digestion process get expended. Protein's 20 to 30%. So if all you did was say, you know what, let's bump up your protein to where it needs to be. Start eating it first. If you didn't change anything, if you kept everything calories the same, you would initially have some weight loss just from that. And what's cool about that weight loss is it would be from fat, not from your lean mass, because protein helps you hold on to your lean mass. I mean, when you hear about these diet studies where people lose, and in a caloric restricted state with not optimal protein, you will lose on average 20 to 30% of the weight from skeletal muscle, which is devastating. Like when you think about it, if in the perfect world you could maybe gain 1.5 pounds of muscle in a month, and yet you lost 3 pounds in a month going on a diet, you're in deep metabolic trouble, right? So protein's always the foundation that you build everything else around, and it's going to help with good blood sugar balance. So that's where I always start. Now, I think diets are tools. Some people seem to think diets are religions. So it's like you can carnivore it and vegan it and paleo it, like you can do it, but just get your protein in. It's harder to do with plants alone because plant amino acids were built to make plants, I wish I could remember where I heard that because I was like, that's the best line.
I've never heard that before, but it's golden. So obviously 100% agree. Like the protein aspect is such a nice lever because it just hits too many things: increasing lean muscle mass, increasing basal metabolic rate, satiating, insulin resistance, improving that. I think where people also get lost to is, or I should say lost, but like you get a lot of discussions about is, what about fasting? Like you're hearing, at least on my feed lately, a lot of mixed opinions in terms of is there going to be some health benefits from this? Should I be doing this, especially if I'm going to try and maintain my protein intake at 0.7 to 1 gram per pound? What's your impression or take on intermittent fasting?
So I think we have to define it first.
Good point.
I mean, here's what's so funny to me. I don't know what it was like when you were growing up, but when I was growing up, we ate dinner at about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. We went to bed at 10. So we had at least, 2 to 3 hours between eating dinner and going to bed. You wake up in the morning, you have breakfast an hour or two after waking up. And so you had like a 12 to 14 hour overnight fast. And that was considered normal. And now it's a diet. And I still remember in the United States when Taco Bell started the 4th meal billboard, and it was like, the meal at midnight. I'm like, great, that's just what we need here. It was right alongside, remember when they cut all the fat out and we were supposed to graze and eat 6 times a day to keep our metabolism up? I'm like, oh my gosh, these crazy things. So I think the first thing is to go, how should we be eating? Well, I like to have people eat about 2 hours after waking, if possible, at least an hour, but give your pancreas time to wake up, get out, see the sunlight, wake up, and then you have your breakfast, you have lunch, you have dinner. Hopefully you don't snack because you had your protein, fat, fiber trifecta, so you weren't hungry. You're more insulin sensitive because you're lifting weights. You got good sleep, so you're not insulin resistant, right? So you're doing that. You're drinking a lot of water in between, so you're hydrated. If you want to compress that feeding window, you got to make sure you're getting your protein in. But the other question is why? And that's what I always want to find out with someone, whether it's they want to go vegan, carnivore, whatever they want to do. It's like, all right, well, what's the reason you're doing it? What's the goal? And how do you measure success on that? Because for most people, I think that they actually intermittent fast because they want to lose weight. And if they want to lose weight, there are a variety of ways to get to that goal. So if narrowing your feeding window allows you to control your food intake better, hey, great. As long as you can get in what you need during that feeding window, right? If it's for autophagy, I think I have no idea when this magic autophagy starts.
Timeline?
I don't know how to test for it. I can't tell. I hear that it's exactly at 16 hours. I'm like, really? Or maybe it's 18 hours. I think the most controlled way to trigger autophagy is to exercise.
100%.
So, but I think it can be a great tool for improving insulin sensitivity, giving your body time to heal. Just think about why you're doing it and what the goals are. I don't love, for someone who's older doing 1 meal a day, or doing any kind of, I think if you fast 1 day a month, it's not going to be a problem. But if you were starting to do extended fasts, I'd be concerned. But again, it depends on you, your muscle mass, et cetera, and your goals.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there, JJ, it's like, what is your purpose? And I think people get a little bit lost in it, especially a lot of biohacking communities thinking that, to live optimally, I need to do this. But I do think, my personal opinion is, I do think it's a great tool for weight loss if you do it appropriately and you meet your macro goals, but you got to make sure you're meeting your macro goals
and monitoring your body composition. Because
actually,
we want to. I wish we could retire the phrase weight loss. But I've been told by my team that I cannot retire that phrase because people look for weight loss. They don't look for fat loss. But the reality is, we want to be recomping. We want to be losing fat, building muscle. Right? So we don't want to lose weight. I mean, if you want to lose weight, what you should do is not really eat any protein, eat a low fat, calorically restricted, low carb diet, and sit on a chair because you will lose a lot of muscle. Right?
A hospitalized patient.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there you are. You're going to become sarcopenic very quickly. I mean, just immobilize yourself and take your protein away.
Yeah, it's a good point because, I've seen this with a lot of people that chat to me about their weight loss journey. A lot of people that are doing all the right things, right, and their weight stays the same. And I keep telling them, but you're stronger. You look like you put on some muscle mass. It's not the absolute number that you should be focusing on. It should be, as you said, the body comp. But I think one of the challenges is getting that number, to be honest with you. Like the gym I go to has an in-body. So we, you know, obviously is I'm guessing the gold standard is a DEXA. But you know, I think overall, I always tell people, like, you're looking for the trend, maybe not the absolute
I have a
number.
process. And I don't know if this happened in Canada, but in the States, there was this whole movement about not getting weighed when you go to see your doctor. And you actually could have a little card that says, "Don't weigh me, it triggers me." And I thought, you know, we are looking at this all wrong.
Sorry, I have someone
You did,
brought that to
okay.
my office. I think I'd burn it. I'd be like, what?
Yeah, you're like,